welcome to Rock, Paper, Swords, the historical action and adventure podcast. My name is Matthew Harfey.
And my name is Stephen A. Mackay.
We're both best-selling historical fiction authors, and together we chat about all things historical and anything that could fall under the banner of action and adventure in books, film, TV and games.
And we also talk about rock music from time to time.
Each episode we cover different aspects of history, from the quirky to the almost unbelievable. We also talk about writing, not only with each other, but also with guest authors. On today's episode, we're proud to welcome our very first guest. Robyn Young is the best-selling author of 3 historical fiction series. The Brethren trilogy, recounting the extraordinary clash of civilizations known in the West as the Crusades. The Insurrection trilogy, telling the story of Robert the Bruce, and the New World Rising series set in the post-Wars of the Roses world of the 15th century. Now, writing as Erin Young, she has written her first departure from historical fiction, a contemporary thriller called The Fields. It's already been picked up for translation into several languages, and there's a TV series in the works. And I think there's going to be a huge amount for us to talk to with Robyn or Erin. So let's get started. So Stephen, do you want to ask Erin the first question?
Yes, Robyn or Erin. Why use pen names?
Good question, and why 2 as well, which is definitely confusing at times. Changing from Robyn to Erin, it just felt like a necessary thing to do in terms of how different the books are and the different genres that I'm writing in. And I think having written as Robyn for, my first deal was in 2005, so quite a long time in the world of historical fiction, and then to change to something that's not only a completely different genre, it's a contemporary thriller, but that's also set in the States and is, being published in the States as well. It just made sense to choose something that then readers of either of my genres that I write in, that they would know exactly what they're picking up when they're picking up one of my books, especially because the historical stuff was always in trilogies or a series. So it's nice to just kind of differentiate between the 2. As it happens, Erin was a name that my parents were going to call me before I was born. They had a little list and Erin was on it, and I always much preferred it. And so I used to call myself Erin as a kid. So it does mean something to me. Okay. It's just, making sure that everyone knows this is me writing historical fiction, this is me writing contemporary crime fiction.
So why Robyn Young in the first place then?
Well, that was also on the list. There were 3 names on the list. I've only got 1 more left, and that would be romance or something.
Yeah, you're going to write another genre in the future then?
Yeah, maybe.
So one of the things, sorry, Matthew, Amanda Cockrell, I reviewed one of her books recently. She writes under Damien Hunter. Mm-hmm. So she obviously picked a man's name. So I don't know if that was to do with sales or not. I've not asked her, but do you think that would affect sales?
I think potentially, yes, depending on what you're writing. I mean, it was certainly something that was asked of me when I first met my publishers in 2005. And there was a question of, pseudonyms, and Robyn is, like I said, it's a personal name to me. It was something that I was going to be called, but it was also nicely androgynous. I mean, we don't lie about the fact that I'm a woman. There's always a picture of me in the back of the books. It says she in my biography, but at the same time, the covers were certainly of my first, well, all of them really have been pretty masculine, and all of my protagonists up until The Fields have been men. A lot of the readership for historical fiction, particularly the type that I was writing, is predominantly male. I mean, I noticed back in the day when I first went on Facebook, and it was the first time I really got to see some of the demographics of the people who were following me on Facebook, and it was predominantly men. I think now with the contemporary thriller, I think it's more women that are reading me. So it's been an interesting switch, but it was a conscious decision to not sound so feminine, and to give a sense. I mean, there's a lot of statistics bandied about, you know, the fact that men's I think it's a huge generalization. I'm sure you both read books by women. I read a lot by both men and women. But, you know, there is something, I think, probably around historical fiction, that there is a little bit of sexism just innately there, I think, in male readers, thinking, oh, well, she can't write about swords and, you know, war and the Crusades. And so it was just making sure that nobody was put off immediately, and that would hopefully then get into my book and realize that, yes, I am a woman, and yes, I can write this. So
it's an interesting thing, because I think it is, as you say, it's a generalization, but I think it's there are statistics about it. I'm pretty sure that's the same, but the inverse goes for if one of me or Stephen wrote a romance novel, probably writing under a man's name would potentially put off different, you know, women readers who would be looking for a certain type of romance and would think, oh, that they're not going to do as good a job potentially. I don't know, and they might be right in my case.
I think it's that thing, isn't it? I mean, we're all just trying to make readers pick a book off the shelf.
Yeah, exactly.
And as long as they like you, once they've read it, then hopefully they go away and read everything that you write from then on. But you just don't want that barrier at all. And I think a lot of women, I think, you know, I've not actually ever asked her, but I would imagine that Amanda Scott, writing as MC Scott with her Roman fiction, I imagine that would have been a consideration. I certainly know other female writers who have chosen their initials rather.
There's a lot of writers, I mean, you know, have done initials, haven't they, in the past, to sort of just keep it so we don't know, in theory, you don't know what the sex is, the gender.
Mm-hmm.
Sex, gender, I don't know. I'm so confused.
Oh God, let's not go there.
Let's not go there.
Don't start that.
Oh no, God. Right, no, I'm not starting that. I just
Cancelled again, Matthew.
Moving, it's cancelled again for the third time today. So, okay, I'm going to move on. Moving quickly on. So, Brethren, your first novel, was it the first novel that you ever wrote? And what was the first novel you ever wrote? And what sort of got you starting writing in the first place, really, I guess, is the question.
It wasn't the first. It was the third. Well, actually fourth, if you count the one I tried to write when I was 10. And I got as far as drawing the front cover, and then there was a blank page, and then I was stumped. And then I wrote in my very early 20s 2 fantasy fiction novels, one of which I wrote while I had a horrible normal job in a building society, which I absolutely hated, and I would write in my lunch breaks and in the evening, just as some sort of outlet for
escape,
creativity. Exactly, yeah. And it ended up at 350,000 words.
Wow.
Which I didn't realize at the time is pretty much unsellable in any.
Oh, you could make that into 4 different books.
Yeah, exactly. I should have just.
Yeah, that's what I would have done anyway.
But I mean, I was so proud of myself for having written a more than full-length novel. And I think, you know, anyone who does write a novel knows how difficult it is. But what I didn't really realize at that time was that, you know, it's not just a case of just starting at word 1 and putting all of your passion on the page. There's some things to consider, like editing and making it good and making it make sense and plotting. Yeah, all the kind of useful stuff in a novel, which, you know, at the time, for me, it was just something to get it all down rather than, you know, really thinking about the craft of it. And by the way, that if it sounds like I have chickens, I have 2 baby seagulls on my roof. So
I actually wondered if it was your chair. I didn't want to say anything in case it was your chair squeaking, but I thought that sounds like seagulls.
They're literally just outside there. Sorry, but you know, hey, it's Brighton, so you're getting a flavour of where I am.
As long as they don't attack you.
Oh no, they do, yeah. But yeah, so I finished it. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I sent it off to a bunch of agents, fully expecting to get, you know, oh my God, this is amazing, back as a response. And no. Postcards with no on them. I mean, you know, which we've all experienced, and anyone who's ever submitted will have experienced at some point, probably often.
Yeah.
So that kind of made me realize that actually maybe this isn't as easy as just, you know, using it as an escape from my crappy day job. I really need to think about the craft of this. So I went on and I did a really fantastic evening class in creative writing at Sussex University for about 2 years. And it was one of those, you know, sort of adult evening classes, everyone coming in after work and trying their hand at writing, but it was really good. And we had some fantastic tutors who, you know, they weren't just kind of broadening our horizons in terms of reading and also what we needed to think about when we were telling a story, why this perspective, you know, really look at setting and bringing it to life, and metaphor and simile and things that, you know, I'd kind of never really touched on even at English class at school. So it's kind of like a new sort of way of looking at writing and realizing actually there's a lot more to it than just putting words on a page. And what they also did, which was which I then continued in a master's in creative writing at Sussex, was basically had us constantly read each other's work and edit the shit out of it, often, particularly at master's level, quite brutally, but also constructively. And for me, that is what changed my writing, and I think put it on several years. Had I not done particularly the master's course, I think I would have still been, you know, waiting to be published, and still sort of you know, kind of tinkering around the edges rather than just really getting in there and pulling the thing apart, which, you know, now we as published novelists, we all have to do on a regular basis. And we know that that's part of the process. And, you know, we kind of, even though it's painful, I relish that opportunity because, you know, I want it to be as good as it can be. And so that was a real kind of good, steep learning curve from those first unpublishable fantasy novels to Brethren, which I had the idea for when I was doing the adult creative writing course in the evenings. And then I did it as part of my dissertation on my master's. And that's what my then, the man who became my agent, Rupert Heath, he read that while I was on my, or he read a bit of it while I was on my master's degree, when we had an agents and publishers day, which was really useful, but also one of those sorts of here are your hopes and dreams, and this is the likelihood of you ever getting published. So again, another reality check about not then just the craft, but the industry that we were all trying and hoping to get into. So Brethren was sort of born in that arena, but then it took another 5 to 7 years after that to work to be taken on by the agent, by Rupert, who I was then sort of back and forth with a bit because he liked the idea of it, but it just, at the time when I was writing it, it was in first person. It was my main character, Will Campbell, looking back on his life in the Crusades. And one of Rupert's first suggestions was, well, why are we looking back with him as an old man sitting about in Scotland? Can't we actually travel with him to the Crusades? And the moment he said that, the moment it opened out what I ended up really wanting to have done, because I'd done all of this research anyway, which was to then tell the story from the Christian and the Muslim perspectives, which then opened it out into a much bigger story, and it became a trilogy. But it was a long process. It was many years to get it into the shape that a publisher wanted it in.
So you started that as a single novel then?
Yes. Yeah.
Right, okay.
That's like me with the Benicia Chronicles. I thought it was going to be one novel, and I've just finished writing book number 9.
Amazing. So, yeah.
And I still haven't got to the end of what was originally I thought was going to be in the one novel.
Yeah.
So, in terms of timeline.
Mm-hmm.
So I had this idea. So it starts here, there's a bit in the middle, and it ends there. Fine, that's it. Novel.
Well, and then, you know, especially when if it does well, or you get a publishing deal and people want more and your readers want more.
But for me, it was like, as soon as I started writing, I realized that actually, like you say, you've got to have a structure, you've got to have something that actually attracts the reader, you've got to make people want to have a story arcs and character arcs and things. And as soon as I did that, I thought, well, there's no, I mean, I could have written it one novel, but it would have been a bloody long novel. You know, it would have been like a million words or something.
350,000 words long. Yeah.
Yeah. So you talked. So you mentioned that you enjoyed. I was thinking. Well, first I was thinking while you were talking that you were saying that you studied and then you did a master's in writing. I'm thinking, I know I haven't studied anything about the craft of writing. I don't know about Stephen. I don't want to say Stephen hasn't, but I was thinking maybe this is why you're more successful than us. But I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, you don't need to. I really don't think that you need to. I found personally that they were incredibly helpful and just took me to new places with my writing and made me realize that I could do more if I was more rigorous about the editing process and about critiquing myself. And that, for me, was the most valuable part of the master's degree. A lot of it was enjoyable and really fascinating, but sitting down with, at that point, there were 9 of us in the class and all writing completely different things. You know, some of us were doing poetry collections, some of us were doing novels, plays, whatever. So it was actually a really good environment to work in because, you know, it wasn't, I think there was one point, because I was the only person writing commercial historical fiction in the form of Brethren. And I think I remember at one point saying to, because I had probably that day quite a lot of criticism about a certain scene. And I think I said, well, you know, you guys are all writing literary stuff and poems and whatnot, and I'm writing commercial fiction. And I remember my tutor just looking over his glasses at me saying, there's no such, in this classroom, there is no such thing as literary and commercial fiction, just good and bad. So it's like, oh, yes. I saw what he meant completely.
I see what you mean about if there's 9 different people and they're all writing historical fiction, that would be a hellish environment because you would be kind of against each other and try to outdo one another. So I see what you mean. It would work well if we were all doing different stuff.
Yeah, no, it really did. And then, like I said, it was just, I mean, every time I sat down and wrote, I would have, you know, this new critic in my head, which sometimes is a kind of a bit of a horrible beast. And I have to say, so I've just finished the 2nd book in the new contemporary thriller series. And I don't know whether it was, I've spoken to a few other authors about this, and the last couple of years have been obviously weird and bad or difficult or challenging in some way for everyone for lots of different reasons. But I think one of the things I really found with writing the sequel to The Fields and how challenging it was partly because I didn't have my usual network of, you know, writers to go and chat to. And after the master's degree, we formed like a writing network, and we stayed in that for many years, and we would meet every couple of weeks and just, you know, rip shreds out of each other's work. But it was so good and so necessary and so weirdly enjoyable. And I haven't had that in a while, but what I have had since I've become published is a lot of friends in this industry, and it would be completely normal for me to, you know, at least have a lunch or a dinner or a coffee with, you know, several of those writers over the course of a month. And I realized just how much I get from talking about the craft with other people away from my desk, where it is just me and my very fierce critic, which I've honed it to be. But sometimes you need to be a bit nice to yourself, and your other writers can sometimes be a bit nicer to you than you can yourself. And not just that, but not being out in the world. And
so I definitely found the not being out in the world and having new, like not having just things going on, you know. So I ended up, all I was seeing was the same, you know, like everybody else was, you know, the same people and the same walls of the house, and taking the dog on the same walk every day. And in the end, like everything that I saw on that walk ended up in the books I was writing at the time. You know, there's a tree that I see every day, you know, that's in there.
A duck,
you see a duck that was in there. There's a swan, you know, and anything that I saw was like, right, that's in the book. Because your brain's like, there's just nothing new coming in, and everything that was coming in was just bad news.
And I think you realize also what you take in unconsciously as a writer a lot of the time, you know, just sitting in a cafe having a cup of tea, and you don't really realize it, but, you know, you'll hear a laugh or you'll see somebody's the shape of their face or the way that they talk or something, and that will just end up going in there without you even really noticing it.
And I think one of the things that I like about, or when started talking to Steve and about doing this podcast, it's about we're sort of saying, Stephen's writing full time now. I'm writing full time as well. I know you do as well, Erin. And so Stephen's only just started writing full time quite recently, and we were talking about it and saying what a solitary thing it is, and how nice it is to talk to someone that you get on with, who also understands, even if it's only virtually. Obviously, we're not in the same location, but to be able to speak about doing the podcast and about the craft of writing and meet different authors, and just a social element to doing this podcast as well, with another writer who sort of understands what you're going through and what you do, and you can talk honestly about about things, and how things are going, which other people might not be interested in, or they might be, who knows. But sometimes you can't be honest, like, openly. So sometimes we have to, we don't always talk on the podcast. So sometimes you have to have private conversations. So there's things that you can't.
Yes.
But so we talked quite a lot about you, how you got to be a professional writer, and you got published, and you did all this. You did the masters. So you mentioned that you really like the cutting things up and sort of going back and editing yourself and really going in there too. And I was just saying, before we came on air, as it were, I was saying to Stephen that I've just finished doing sort of the edits that I got through from my editor, from the publishers, and I was saying, I just hate it. I just hate the editing. That part of the editing process, I don't enjoy it at all. So what about you? What's your sort of process, and what do you most like, and what don't you like? And do you like the editing? It sounds like you like the editing part.
I like it for just making it better, and knowing that these, what a privilege really to be able to have those and that level of professionalism looking at your work and telling you before a whole bunch of readers look at it, because they're going to tell you as well. And you can't do anything about it then. So it's that, the last barrier before it's going to go out there in the world. And I've got this great team now, especially with the new thrillers. I've got a really good UK agent and editor who I've been with since 2005, and so he really knows me and my writing style, although I think he's really enjoying this new foray into contemporary crime, because that's also, even though he's done a lot of historical fiction over the years, he was Con Iggulden's editor, Philip Gregory's editor, Bernard Cornwell's editor, so he's definitely absolutely in there in terms of historical fiction, but he's Stephen King's UK editor in terms of the crime and thriller side of things. So I'm with somebody who's absolutely fantastic and really knows his stuff, but he also knows how I work. And I always find now that it's really just like, I feel that what he does is, I've created the room, and that I've built all the furniture in it, and he just comes along and just turns the light on at the end, and it's like, oh yeah, of course, well, that picture's wonky, and I've left a box that's not fully unloaded over there, and that's his job. I feel
that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, and he's not prescriptive, but he's also very clear as well about the areas that aren't working, where the pace is off, or there's not enough character development, and that's really what a good editors.
I find that sometimes the most difficult thing is when it's not clear, when it is clear, when it is, this is missing, you need to add something, and this is what I think there's a possibility you should add this here. That's the best type of editing. The worst is when it's like, one of the comments that I got of this was that the opening chapter sets the scene well, but isn't as strong as the rest of the book. So, well,
that's frustrating.
Well,
I don't really know what to do with that.
Yeah, it's your job. You need to sort that, Matthew.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's like, could you give me some sort of ideas?
You make it easy for me.
Yeah. Well, it's like, it's that thing is that as the writer, you think that you've done the best you can, right? So you obviously I've already polished it as much as I thought it needed to be polished. So then you look at it and think, well, what is it that you don't
guidance?
Like? Yeah, I need some guidance. So I did tweak it a bit and fiddle around, but I've sent it back. So I've done stuff, but I don't know what do you want to do.
Just a few commas changed. And
I rejigged it a bit, but I mean, it's like, well, do you throw? I mean, in the past I've thrown chapters away and rewritten them, but this just felt like, well, maybe it doesn't need a rewrite. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe they'll come back and tell me.
See what they say.
Yeah, well, it's interesting with this as well, because now I have an American agent and an American editor, which, you know, my UK team are really keen to get their view at the same sort of time. So
how does that work?
Team, it's, you know, we're all finding our feet with it. I mean, so far, certainly with the Fields, they had very similar issues, so that was easy. I'm sort of waiting for I've had the kind of headline notes on this new one, and they seem to be again in sync. So I'll see when I get, you know, all of the proper sort of structural edits.
How does that work in terms of the process? Because normally, you know, you finish working and do whatever you think you need to do, you hand it over to someone, and they come back with comments about, you know, we think you could change this and add a chapter here or whatever. But if you've got two different editors, how does that work? Then they come back with separate notes, and you just have to try to massage them all into the thing.
Yes, yeah, and you know, and sometimes one will suggest something, and actually the other will suggest something different, but actually they're both getting to the same issue ultimately, which is, you know, this bit is just sagging and it's lost the tension. And they're both coming at it from different perspectives and different ideas of how to manipulate that and make it better. But sometimes you can just see, oh, they're both getting at the same thing here. So I think you almost have to sort of, I don't know, like read them with this very sort of kind of open mind, as it were, and not get too bogged down in it as well. But like I said, neither of them are very prescriptive, and I think they both sort of trust me enough to go away and do a good structural edit based on them, you know, both turning different lights on at different corners of the room and me seeing different things. And then after that, obviously it's the copy edits and then the proofread, which would, I think, be complicated if I had two closely knit teams like this and we were going to do slightly different issues. But my UK publishers they take the copy edited and proofread file from the American publishers, because it's set in Iowa. So
you're keeping the American spellings
exactly for the British version as well, because it seems silly not to be, you know, I'm gonna say mom instead of mum, and parking lot, and you know, it's just why not keep all the spelling and make it really feel American? So that worked out quite well, actually, that the UK team were happy just to pull that over from the US. So that kind of keeps us a bit tighter in terms of, you know, because otherwise it would be just endless files and who have I done this for? And I'd get lost, I think. So
I haven't actually got this as a question, which I realize I should have actually had as a question about, give us a little bit of background about this new thriller and the new series and stuff, but also why did you move to do it? You know, what possessed you to suddenly go, oh, I'm going to write a modern thriller?
Yeah, well, that just kind of came out of the blue completely, the idea. It was January 2017. I was sitting in bed. I was supposed to be finishing Court of Wolves, which is the last historical novel that I've written, which is part of the New World Rising series. And, you know, the deadline was looming. And of course, I was just staying in bed to avoid it and just reading The Guardian. And I'd gotten all the way down to the very bottom of The Guardian's page that day, trying to avoid going to my desk. And I read this really interesting, unsettling article about big agriculture and over farming, and some of the dangers around that and some of the repercussions of that, particularly around corn production. And it was an article that was set, it was around Northern Europe, so it wasn't even about America. But it was just one of those lightning bolt moments of, ooh, what if I did this and sort of pulled this into a human setting and took it a little bit further, and you know, what could happen if this happened in a bigger scale, sort of thing. I can't say too much about it because it gives me the whole plot.
It is actually about fields.
It is actually about cornfields.
I mean, expected that. I don't know why.
And when you say corn, do you mean corn or do you mean maize?
Maize, yeah.
Okay, just to make sure. So for our international listeners,
Yeah,
There is a
me.
difference.
But yeah, so I just had this like lightning bolt moment, and carried on with my day, carried on writing Quarterfalls. And I spoke to my editor probably not that long after having the idea, because he's always been really open about the fact that at some point I wouldn't mind trying my hand at another genre, because I've been writing historical fiction for so long, and I also felt that I could stretch my writing a bit, and that the genre that I had been writing in, big, action, adventure, historical fiction, that I couldn't go to the places that I wanted to with my writing in that genre. So I wanted to, see if I could
push yourself.
Yeah, kind of really challenge myself a bit. And so I talked to him about the idea, and he said, well, that's a bit bizarre, but I quite like it. And we went back and forth, and I got some stuff down on paper, and I started looking into it. And the sort of conceit of the plot really demanded that it was set in a very rural, very corn heavy area. And so the first thing I did was Google, where produces the most corn in the world. America. Biggest corn producer in America, Iowa. So immediately I had a setting, and the more I started looking into Iowa, which at that point I had no clue about, I'd never been, I didn't know
Field of Dreams, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yes, that was it. Yeah, although as somebody pointed out that mine should be called Field of Screams.
Field of Screams, they're perfect.
So started researching, started plotting, had some really good early conversations with my editor in the UK and my new agent, Anthony Topping, who I'm with now, who was also really enthusiastic about it. And my US agent, who I'd been with since, Brethren was published in the States. The first trilogy was published out there, but I hadn't been published out there since. And so suddenly he has, because, historical fiction, it just doesn't do that well in the States. It's really hard to sell, and it's certainly hard for publishers to make money out of it. But Dan, my agent, had stuck with me all of these years, and then he was suddenly thrilled at the prospect that I might be writing an American set contemporary thriller. So everyone was really behind it. And when I finished Quarterfalls, I made the decision to go out to Iowa and do some research out there. And that was when, for me, when I was actually there, boots on the ground, was when it all just fell into place, and the setting was perfect and atmospheric. And I've always been quite setting based and imagery and atmosphere based in my novels. That's something that I just like to, that's how I like to write. It's the kind of books I also like to read. And so sense of place is really important to me. And then being out there just really kind of enhanced the book so much and gave me all of this local color and a real sense of, being out there in the cornfields, and it's muggy and there are bugs, and, what would it be like in the opening scene? There's the body of a young woman found horrifically murdered in the cornfields, and just being there, it was like, yeah, I can totally smell this and imagine it. And so yeah, that's how it started. So it turned into this, I guess you'd call it, part police procedural, part political thriller, with a lot of dark family secrets around the edges. So it's kind of it's a novel. People call it a police procedural, but I think it's also a little bit different to that as well. Certainly, my team think it's a bit more than that. So yeah, just came home, started writing, and at the same time, my agent met a TV agent from LA for a meeting about something else, told her about the book. She said, oh God, that sounds great. Send me what you have. At the time I had 3 chapters and a 10-page synopsis. My agent sent it to her, and she read it over a weekend and said, oh my God, this reminds me of True Detective. And she's the agent for the man who created True Detective. So I thought, well, that's a very good, and plus it's one of my favorite TV shows of all time. So that was good to hear. And she went away and managed to get a TV option for it at that time, which I couldn't talk about at the time because, you know, you sign all your NDAs and whatever. So until recently, until the producers announced it, I wasn't able to talk about any of that. But
so that's all been greenlit now and everything. It's really going ahead. It's moving into,
well, you know, as
pre-production
much as,
or
as much as these things are. I mean, you know, we've got a fantastic screenwriter who's also going to be the showrunner. She's heading out to Iowa to do some research herself. She's wonderful. I'm really enjoying working with her. I mean, it's hers and it's the producers. I mean, my part in it is limited. I mean, I was going
to ask you about
which is lovely, but it's.
Are you an executive producer on it? But what does that really mean? I was interested to know what your role was.
It's a nice credit to have. It's, you know, I will read the script. I will get a certain amount of creative consultation, but ultimately it is their baby now. And that's the way it goes with film and TV, unless you're huge and you're a really big name and you've already done, you know, amazing scripts in Hollywood and you've got a name for yourself in that side of things, and I don't. So, and also I didn't know where to start to turn this into a, you know, a TV series with however many episodes and all of the, you know, the beats that they've now got to find. And
it's so different. Yeah, it's so different.
Yeah, they're the experts, so you just let them lead the way.
Yeah, basically. I mean, I think if I absolutely hate anything, I get to maybe say that. I don't know if that gets taken into consideration.
See, I read on, I think it was Twitter, I read this morning that 50 Shades of Grey, some actress, whoever it is that's in it, she says he used to film 2 separate sets of the scenes because the author had so much control that she would tell them what to do and then they would get away and do their own versions.
Right.
There's a dog going.
Can hear my seagulls.
Hear the seagulls, can hear your dog. Yeah, your dog's gone crazy.
No, it's I mean, also with 50 Shades of Grey and E.L. James, I mean, she has, I guess, probably so much power with the success of those books. I mean, you know, for me, it's all, you know, that's how this industry goes. You know, the more power that you have, the more likely you are to be allowed that sort of control, even though it might, be.
I was going to say sometimes,
sometimes
it could make it worse because, as you say, you're not the expert in making a TV series, so it's probably better to leave it to the people that know what they're doing.
I would rather, yes. I mean, ultimately, the dream would be to just sit there at the premiere and watch the first episode or whatever.
Have it be absolutely amazing.
Wow. It would be, I mean, obviously with these things, and it's, you know, even though it's at a really good place right now, you just never know. I mean, I know a lot of people in this industry who've had, you know, TV shows get so close to being made and, you know, things go wrong.
Shut that dog up, carry on.
All right. or things change, right? I mean, things change and the world changes, something happens and suddenly.
Of course. Yeah, or, you know, there's something similar that, you know, is about to come out, or, you know, they've already done enough of this type of thing, and, you know, you just hit the market at the wrong time, which is the same with publishing. But I think at least with publishing, once you've signed a contract, unless something really catastrophic happens, then you're going to have it published.
I think it's, you know, it's when it's
different,
because, you know, we're trying to get the Serpent Sword made, but we're much earlier stage of the process, and but when you start looking at the budgets that you're talking about, the amount of money that's needed, you can understand why things just fall through, because there's so much risk. Every stage, everyone's sort of trying to mitigate the risk, and the risk is, you're talking millions, whereas bringing a book out, you know, at the end of the day, they could bring the book out and not lose a huge amount of money if they don't sell as many copies as they wanted to. Whereas, you know, if you bring the TV series out and it's a complete and utter flop, you know, they can be losing millions, or a movie, you know, as well. Yeah,
no, exactly. And I just don't want any part of that responsibility at all. So this is, you know, this is the nice bit, being able to sort of, you know, enjoy it and talk about it and enjoy the potential for it, really.
Well, hopefully, you know, it all comes to fruition and we get to see it, because with the sort of pedigree of the people that you've talked about, you know, working with people like who worked on the True Detective series and things like that, are they still involved in? So is the agent involved?
So she's my TV agent. So she
Right.
then brokered the deal with the two producers.
Okay.
But the producers are phenomenal, both amazing women, and got a female screenwriter, showrunner, and my first female protagonist. So it feels brilliant that we've got a really sort of powerful female team behind it. Having spent so much of my life writing about men, it's it's kind of interesting now.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that when you first time you write about a female protagonist, everything seems to be going great. So maybe that's
a lesson for us, Matthew.
There's a lesson for us. Well, yeah, maybe. I'm going to edit my books, change all the characters. You said that you really like being in the place, and you went to Iowa, and you really got a sense of of the setting, and I know from previous conversations I've had with you, and I've heard you talking before about your research, and that you really love, you're very sort of hands-on, and you like getting to a place and also doing lots of research. And I know with your historical fiction novels you did quite a lot of research, and I was going to ask, I wanted to know could you tell us some of the more unusual bits of research and sort of hands-on stuff you've done for the historical fiction, and also for the modern writing, modern thriller, and which was easier? Did you need to do as much research for the modern thing or more?
Yeah, interesting. It's so in terms of the sort of physical research, which I just really enjoyed doing, but also again I just found the more that I did, the more it enhanced my writing. So I mean, for the Brethren trilogy, I mean, certainly specifically for Brethren, I was really living on a just nothing, basically. I mean, I was lucky enough to have a partner who worked, and I was doing teaching in my spare time. But with that and doing the master's degree, it was impossible to have a full-time job. So I basically had no money to spend on traveling for it, or really even that much in terms of research tools. I mean, every Christmas and birthday I would ask all of my family for book tokens so I could just go and buy books on the Crusades and the Templars and everything that I was writing about, and I would literally just mine every detail, because the internet also wasn't really what it is now. I mean, Wikipedia was definitely not something that you would ever want to, I mean, even now, I mean, I suppose there's definitely more citations these days, but back then it was like a free-for-all, and God knows what, this information is. So I really wanted to take it from as many reputable sources as possible, but I really had very little to fund all of that, which is partly maybe why it took so long as well to write. But as I got published and I was able to spend a bit more on research and actually talking to experts and traveling to some of the places that the books were set, which for me it's so vital. If obviously you can write a book and be successful without having been to those locations. That was Brethren for me. But I also know now that where I can, I really do want to be walking the streets or the battlefields or the castle or wherever, and really getting a sense of it. So as I got published and I was able to afford to do things like that, that was really helpful. And also by the time I had written the Brethren trilogy and then was writing the Insurrection trilogy, which again is a lot of men with specifically their horses. And I think I'd run out of pretty much every way of describing how a horse sounds when it gallops, or the noise that it makes, or the smell. And I ended up getting in contact with a local riding school where the head of the school was also one of Britain's premier skill at arms teachers, and so all of their horses would do all of they'd go and do the jousting at the Tower of London and the big festivals. And so I was taught to ride for a year by him on these terrifying horses. And that gave me a really sort of solid sense of, and actually a lot more respect for the knights and the crusaders and the men that I was writing about, because good God, these animals are amazing, but also incredibly terrifying, and have very much their own personality, and will just do anything they want with you. And so that helped. I did some falconry. I actually flew falcons and hawks at a medieval festival. I got so into it, I started doing it yearly, and going to Hurstmonceux Festival in Sussex and staying in the like medieval encampment where everyone is very you know, anal about the whole, you know, the threads have to be original, like medieval, and this, and it was amazing to spend that much time with not just reenactors, but people who are incredibly serious, making their own weapons, and that really immersed me in the sort of time. So that was really good. Sword fighting, I've done a bit of that. Wearing armor, realizing how heavy chainmail is and how it smells once a bunch of blokes have been whacking each other with swords. All of that was really important for me to do. And also I ended up, because I really wanted to bring to life a bit more, not just the battles and the sort of the terror and the excitement of it, but also the repercussions of warfare on the human psyche. And so I then went to speak to an ex-SAS commander who really was very open and honest about what it really does feel like to hand fight to the death with somebody. And so I went down all of those different avenues because, well, to be honest, I could afford it by that point, and I could afford to do those things. But it definitely enhanced my writing. And so when I went to write The Fields and I went out to Iowa, one of the first things I did was go and shoot a Glock, because my female protagonist, she's a newly promoted sergeant in a sheriff's office, and Glock is a standard issue weapon for police and the FBI out there. So and that was also terrifying, and really eye-opening, and just the smell and the cartridges, the spent cases coming back, they're hot. One landed on my head and burnt my scalp. And
how incredibly loud they are that you don't expect. I think from the movies you can't really quite get it in films.
Recoil.
Yeah, the recoil. Yeah. I was actually really good at it, so that was kind of fun.
So yeah, I need to. Well, I'm just toying with the idea of writing a 19th century novel, which I started researching for, and so the second half of the 19th century, and so all the Colt 45s and all that sort of stuff. Excellent. So I've got to find somewhere where I can shoot some of those, but it's not so easy in the UK. But there must be some places, someone somewhere will have a shooting range that you can do something. But
I'm sure I have a few friends who have things. So I could probably put you onto them.
Oh, that sounds good. Yeah. I went for the first. Funny you said you were quite good at it. I went to a stag do last year, and before we got drunk, we went on a clay pigeon shooting thing, and I'd never shot before. Mm-hmm. And all these other guys, some of them ex-military. There was a guy there who was one of the guy's dads was a games keeper and stuff, and they're all like shoot loads. Anyway, I won. Shot better than them. It's like, come on, rubbish.
Yeah. So satisfying.
Just rocked up, and they were all so pissed off.
I went with, that's the only other time, other than actually a black powder weapon, which I have shot a couple of sort of English Civil War era pieces here. But yeah, before shooting the Glock, the only other thing I shot was clay pigeons, and I went with Lee, my partner, to he'll hate me for saying this, but we were in Scotland actually, and went shooting, and there were 22 clays, and we started off with the ones going overhead, and then the instructor was like, oh, you're both really good at this, let's try some ones that go shooting along the ground and things. And
that's what I did really well on those,
right? And I got 21 out of 22, and Lee got 20, and I've never let him forget it. The guy, we did those ones that go along the ground like rabbits or hares or whatever, and the guy said, if you hit them in this first sort of 2 or 3 meters, whatever, you'll get 3 points, whatever. He was the guy that was scoring, and he said, if you get the next bit, you get 2 points, and only 1 point if you get it at the end, so you've got more time to kind of
see it coming, and I just worked out where they were going, and I just shot them as they were like in the first couple of meters, bam, bam, every time, and it was ridiculous, but it got me the points, and the other guys not as good.
What I'm learning from this is that when the apocalypse comes, Matthew, you and I need to be getting together and manning the barricades.
Well, and I've got an axe, I've got an axe back there as well. So when we run out of ammunition, we can.
So I just need to hide behind the two of
you. You can write the songs. You could be behind with the guitar writing the songs.
I'll
saga.
I'll be the fool.
We need that at night, around the campfire. You definitely need some songs.
You need to tell us about, you need to write the songs down like the medieval troubadours. You need to telling our tales. We'll be too busy fighting to do the writing as well. So, what else? Oh, right, I know. Got a question. Is it true? I think it's true about that you once had lunch with Henry Cavill.
I did.
Can you tell us the story? Is this for public consumption?
So I got a random call. This is probably, I think it's about 2010. So it's just after he'd filmed the first Superman. I don't think it'd come out yet, but he'd done a few other movies before that. And I got a call from my agent saying, I have Henry Cavill's agent, and Henry wants to meet you and talk about being Will Campbell from the Brethren trilogy, and possibly producing it as well, and being the starring role. So it was kind of like, okay, I'll meet Henry Cavill for drinks in London. So yeah, we had a really interesting, really it was incredibly flattering, because he'd read the Brethren trilogy like a couple of years before and just been a genuine fan. But now, at that point, when he had all of the connections in Hollywood, I think he saw it as a potential thing, because he genuinely loved the books, that's something he could really get his teeth into. And I think he really liked the idea of doing all the sword fighting and the horse riding and everything else in the books. And I think he's ended up going on and unfortunately doing all of that in The Witcher. So I'm really not sure that he'll come back. But no, it was an incredibly exciting and flattering thing to have happen. And for a time we thought, maybe that Brethren would potentially get made. But yeah, like these things just often there'll be these moments of extreme excitement in this industry, and then just years of nothing.
You had your Ferrari picked out and then nothing came of it.
Yeah.
I never spoke over you then, Stephen. I think I stepped on your joke.
All right, okay. So no, I was contacted by the producers of Goodfellas,
right,
like in 2014, about my second book, and they wanted to produce it. And I get 2 emails from them, and that was it. I never ever heard from them again. And basically, after I woke up that morning to the first email, and I basically had a Ferrari chosen in my head. That was it. I knew what I wanted. And then I never ever heard from them again, and I was quite depressing after that. But it was just, at the same time, it was really nice.
Yeah, well, it shows that people, even if like same with me, even though nothing came of it, it shows that
somebody liked it,
have storytelling ability enough that other people want to turn it into something else. So I think you've just got to take these big moments,
you learn it,
enjoy the hell out of them, and let them go as well.
On.
Just have to enjoy it. Put it all down into the memory banks, because it's like you never get you never know what experiences are going to be the ones that are going to stick. And
exactly. It's such a weird industry in that sense that, as you two will know so well, that you can, most of my year is just me in a room working, and then there'll be these little bursts of activity around publication, and you'll suddenly be on the radio or the TV, or something exciting will happen, like you'll get that email, or you'll go out for drinks with Henry Cavill, and then the rest of the year you're right back down with your feet on the ground on your own.
The next thing, you're in a podcast with me and Stephen.
Well, absolutely, and this is absolutely the highlight of my year.
This is You got Henry Cavill on one side, me and Stephen on the other. It's just...
Has Henry Cavill got a good Scottish accent?
I've never heard him do one.
Well, we'll try it.
Right. Stephen's vying for the role already.
Okay.
Stephen's
Yeah, well, there you go.
He's just putting on the accent. He's just auditioning here. This is him auditioning for
well, he's got the job. I mean,
good stuff.
So
got the accent anyway.
So Stephen, you wrote a question down here. Number 8 in your list of questions. You want to read it out or not? Do you want to ask it? Or
yeah, well, like Robyn says, or Erin, sorry, you're on your own most of the time. So I just wonder, when I put out a new book, I obsessively check the Amazon charts just to see how well it's doing. You know, I pretty much do it every day. It doesn't even matter if it's a new book or not. I just wondered if the two of you do the same thing. As soon as you put a new book out, do you then spend the next 3 days every hour looking at the Amazon charts to see if it's moved up?
I did with the fields. I did with Brethren when it first came out, and I think Crusade and probably Requiem, and I got really obsessed with looking at reviews and getting really depressed. And I think Requiem had come out, and then I realized that, and you must have had reviewers like this as well. And obviously, you know, Amazon and Goodreads, they're for readers, and reviewers, they're not really for us, even though we sometimes go and haunt the pages. And, you know, I mean, I think it's wonderful if anyone is reading my book. So, you know, whether they've loved it, hated it, whatever, that's, you know, that's up to them, and it should be. But I remember getting this, every time the hardback came out of that first trilogy, there was a 1-star, a really big, long, hate-filled 1-star review, like really taking the time to rip the whole book to shreds. And that happened with Brethren, with this one reviewer, and that hurt because it was my first book out there. And yeah, it definitely stings, and it knocks your confidence, and you're then thinking, oh God, you know, maybe I'm not that good, or maybe, you know, maybe I shouldn't be doing this or whatever. So I definitely had a lot of little kind of knocks of confidence over the years with some, you know, with the really bad reviews that just sting, and sometimes so personal as well, and you're like, God, did I know you at some point? Did I steal your lunch money at school?
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before. I don't know if it's on with Stephen on the podcast or some other chat with other authors about how personal some reviewers can be, and you think, you know, it's all right. Just say, you know, I didn't really like this. I mean, sometimes they're quite good. They just say, I didn't like the book, you know, it wasn't for me, whatever. The one, I tell you, my pet peeve, and now everyone's going to do this now if I say this, the thing I hate the most is when you got a long series like I have, and somebody leaves a review on book number 8, and it's a 1-star review, and it says, I've loved all of his books, but this book is absolutely terrible, and I hate this book or something. And then you look at them on Amazon, and they've never left a positive review for you, and you think, okay, so did you read 7 books and love them and not leave a review, and then one book you couldn't stand and you decide to leave a negative review, or what's going on there? And if you've read 7 books that you loved, do you really hate the 8th one? I mean, is it really,
or do you like maybe 3-star it? You know, maybe
like weird, you know, it's like, really?
No, and I just, exactly that. And I've had so many of those sorts of things. And this one reviewer had read Brethren, then he'd read Crusade, hardback edition. So he'd gone out and bought that, and 1-star, absolutely hated it. And and by the time I got to Requiem, I literally wanted, and I've never done it, and I never would, I wanted to reply and say, mate, just please stop reading my book. You know, do us both a favour. You hate them. Why are you buying the hardback? And I just
signed edition.
Oh God, yeah. It was probably my dad or something. I don't know.
Well, it does make you wonder if it is somebody just being vindictive.
Yeah, sometimes but I think it just made me think, do you know, I need to stop looking at that.
Just don't read them anymore. Yeah.
So
my wife tells me not to look, but I always do.
Yeah, you can't help it. If you see a 1-star, you have to read it.
Can't help it.
Oh, it's hard, isn't it? But then that, I don't know if you find this, but it takes I mean, I think somebody said, I think I remember talking to Alison Weir once, and she said, "Oh, it takes 10 5-star reviews to negate the
Yeah.
1 star." For me, I think it's like 100 5-star reviews to negate the 1 star. Oh, so no, I can't really. I actually blocked after the Fields was published. I blocked Goodreads on my devices, so I could read it, because
do you want me just to check and tell you how it's good?
Should we read some out?
she texts me every morning. I send her an email update.
Well, again, it was, for me, the one that did it was a 1 star by obviously quite a prominent Goodreads reviewer, and she'd got the proof, and it was did not finish so she read 10% of the book, and then made all of these assumptions about what it was going to be, and it's like, well, actually, it's not that if you read it, and it just got to the point where I just thought I need to stop having
that rings a bell
conversations in my head.
That rings a bell. The first book in a new series. So I've got 2 books at the moment out in another series, and the first book was getting a bit more hype because it was a new book in a new series. I think the publishers kind of pushed it a bit more, and it was getting pushed in the States, and there's a PR company and stuff, and so it was all getting a bit more buzz. And then I think Stephen's still reading it. It's been out for about 2 years. But anyway, and that's a running joke. He keeps on saying he's reading it. I don't believe him. But anyway, the first review of the first one off of NetGalley was on Goodreads. And it was, again, I think it was a 1 or a 2 star from a prominent reviewer who had like 40 or 50 likes of it within 10 minutes. I was like, bloody hell, really? And they just said, like, couldn't get into this. It was absolute trash. And it's like really, really, and that really it did knock me because it hadn't come out yet, and you start thinking, oh my god, that's the first review that I see is a shit review.
That's it. The whole series is ruined then.
And I was worried. I was thinking, oh my god.
Panic.
And then of course the good reviews start coming through, and then it did all right. But yeah, it's horrible.
It's with those first novels where you're and actually my publishers in the States did an amazing job with the proofs and sending them out far and wide and doing giveaway competitions, and that was brilliant actually. But it is casting a wide net, and you are going to get a lot because it's a free product. I mean, anyone's just going to go, yeah, I'll have that. So we got loads of, I hate police procedurals, and it says it's a detective series on it, but you just have to, it's a place for readers, definitely not necessarily for authors, I think, but that's just me. I know other authors find it really helpful and useful to go and have a look at reviews. I do not at all.
Well, and on that note of wisdom, I think we'll move on to the regular slots. So we've got some regular little questions we ask everyone at the end. So it's been wonderful having you here. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much
for your time.
It's exciting to be the debut.
Yeah, you're the first guest. Although we've got a couple of episodes without guests, so it's just us whittering on. But you are the very first guest, so you'll always have that. You have Henry Cavill. Excellent. And that you're the first guest on Rock, Paper, Swords. So the questions that we ask each other and everybody else at the end of every episode is, or are, what have you been reading? And there's a bit of discrepancy at the moment. We're just discussing about whether we're going to ask about what are you watching. But at the moment, it's what are you reading, or what have you been reading, and what have you been watching?
Okay.
Are the first 2.
So I've been reading a lot of crime thrillers in the last, year, really. I've read some absolutely cracking books. The one I just put down and just finished, and I wish I hadn't finished it, it was incredible, was a book called Notes on an Execution by Danya, and I had to write this down, Kafka. I think she's American. Or certainly based in America. It's also hard to know how to describe it, but it's about a serial killer, but as well as being told from the serial killer's point of view, who's then been caught, it's actually more about the women in his life. So his mother, his wife, his victims, and also the women who hunt him down. And it's really It's beautiful and profound, and I think it's one of the best books I've ever read.
Wow.
Actually. So I think everything's going to suffer a little bit now as I read.
Every now and again, there's a book like that you read and you think, oh, that's kind of knocked every other book.
Yeah.
I wish I could have written that.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. So Notes on an Execution, hugely
Notes on an Execution.
recommend it.
Great.
And watching, so I'm kind of late to the party on these, but I've just finished Slow Horses, the Mick Herron kind of spooks British TV.
I've heard of it, but I haven't watched it.
It's really good. Yeah, really good. Very good plotting, very neat and well done, and some nice little bits of humour with all the sort of gritty British sort of, kind of spooky crime stuff as well. Gary Oldman is in the lead.
Okay.
He's brilliant. And I just started It's a Sin. Russell T. Davis.
Yeah. I was trying to remember his name. Russell T. Davis. Yeah,
Doctor Who.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, which is also brilliant, and set in the 80s in London during the AIDS crisis. And
again, I haven't watched it because it sounded so depressing. I know that it's probably not all the time.
It's actually not. Well, I mean, I imagine I'll be ugly crying by the end of it. I'm sure it will get very emotional. But what they're doing at the moment is just building up the sort of, that era. The music obviously is phenomenal. The soundtrack's great. Brilliant characterization, and yeah, definitely so far worth watching. And then Stranger Things tomorrow.
Of course.
Have you seen? Oh, is it the new one? Is the new one coming out tomorrow?
And the
end of 2.
Of the new, so that'll be my Friday night tomorrow. So I love them.
So what about you? What about you, Stephen? What have you been reading and watching?
Well, I've been reading Brethren by Robyn Young.
Oh, have you?
Again, actually, I read it probably about 10 years ago. And I remember really enjoying it. So when we knew you were coming on, I thought I'll buy it and read it again. But I've got to be honest, I've only got about 20% into it. It's actually it's quite a long book.
It is, 160,000 words.
Right.
Yeah,
that's the same length as my book that he's not read as well.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm a very slow reader, but I'm definitely enjoying it. It's a good book. Both of them are good books. So I've been reading that, and I've not been watching much at all, Matthew. So what about you?
Well, I've been reading, as I said before, I've been reading my own book, book number 9 of the Benicia Chronicles, Forest of Foes, which I'm sick of now because I've just finished the edits. But
rubbish, is it?
Sorry?
Rubbish, is it?
It's pretty rubbish. No, I mean, don't we all think that what we've written is rubbish at some point? But no, it's okay. I've got past the it's rubbish point, and now I'm thinking it's okay. It's loads of action. And
I'll like that then.
Repeated certain phrases over and over again, which I hadn't noticed, even though I'd read it several times. And my editor said, "You repeat this phrase every book. There's a new phrase that I repeat." And I've got rid of the past one, and then it's a new one that just crops up. And I was like, "Why have I said that so many times?" People sniffing and breathing deeply, or whatever it was.
Oh God, like, turning and nodding and frowning and
nodding. That's the worst.
The number of people taking deep breaths in it. I had to go through. It must have been about 500 times in the book. I thought half the length of the book.
Sighing.
So anyway, I've been reading that and editing, and then I've also been reading non-fiction, The Lonely Planet Guides to Prague and Vienna, because I'm going there next week to Prague and then to Vienna. So
fantastic. Have you been before?
No, I haven't.
No, I haven't either. I've always wanted to go. So you'll have to do some tweets with photographs and make some charts.
Yeah, I'll stick some stuff up there. And I did read in the Lonely Planet Guide that the Czech Republic is the country that drinks more beer per capita than any other country in the world.
Excellent.
So perfect.
Well, I've been there, and I think it was about 20 pence for a pint at the time.
Bit more now, I'm sure, but
it was really, really cheap though. It was quite nice. Yeah, I really like that country.
Sounds good. Brilliant. So I'm looking forward to that. And in terms of what have you been listening to, Stephen?
A guy called Jared James Nichols. So he plays kind of blues rock stuff, and he's got a really heavy guitar sound. So I think we should maybe do another theme song, Matthew, in that style.
Okay, sounds good.
Like that.
We can just do a different theme song every week.
Yeah. Well, maybe not every week, but yeah. So yeah, I'm enjoying that. Lots of good guitar solos in that, which everybody loves, I'm sure.
Cool. And what's his name again?
Jared James Nichols.
Okay. What about you, Erin? Have you been listening to any good music?
Well, I blew up one of my speakers the other month, so
How loud was it?
It's an old amp, and it just blew the speaker. But I've got other music systems, so I've kind of been revisiting Kate Bush a bit because of Stranger Things.
Stranger Things, yeah.
And it just, I mean, I used to love her anyway, and it's so I've just been kind of having her on in the background quite a bit when I've been cooking in the evening. So
here's a quick question that is just, do you listen to music when you're writing?
No, never. I can't. I'd like to be able, and I've tried it in the past when, if your neighbors are having loads of work done and you're trying to block it out, but I can't. Even instrumental
Really?
music, I have to have dead silence, otherwise.
Wow.
Or somewhere kind of with a lot of low level noise, like a cafe or a train is fine as well.
Yeah.
I've listened to ambient white noise. I've listened to like white noise, like rain in a forest and things like that. You can get soundtracks.
Okay.
I've listened to that sort of stuff. That's quite good.
That might work. Although I'd probably end up I don't know, the cornfields and bugs. I mean, maybe definitely not rain.
You can get like so you can get stuff that you can get anything that you want.
Yeah, lots of them.
So one of the recent books, they were at sea, and I just listened to loads of things. You could find like creaking wooden ship in a storm and stuff, and I would listen over and over again to just that in the background, and it's kind of just like white noise, if like rain and stuff. But it kind of seeps into the book. So one book I listened to loads and loads of thunder things, and I realized at the end of the book it's got like 3 thunderstorms in the book.
That's a really good idea, actually. I've never thought about that, because a lot of people have said, about music to enhance things, and it's never worked. But actually, something like that
it works for me. So you can find like the sleeping. Like, you just go on like Spotify, whatever, they got like 10 hours of rainforest or cicadas or whatever it is. You can find anything, and so you can probably find something like wind through the cornfields of Iowa. You probably find that. No wind. Anyway. So, I've been listening to. What do you think I've been listening to, Stephen?
Queen.
There you go. Very much easy answer. Because I was doing this editing, and I thought I don't need to really focus.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But at the same time, if I put on songs like bands that have got lyrics in, it was kind of too much. But I realised that I know the Queen songs so well that I can be singing along to them and kind of air drumming and stuff while I'm listening to them, but at the same time not really hearing it.
Yeah,
because it's just become such a part of my brain. So I was listening to Live Killers, the great double album of Queen before the 80s. So it was recorded in 79. So it's got all of the best stuff, really, when Queen were even better than later, which if possible. I mean, people say the Live Aid was like the pinnacle, and I suppose it was in some ways, but really all of the best songs, I think, are probably, there might be a couple of exceptions, but basically is before 1980, before Hot Space, which we won't talk about. Anyway, so I think that's probably enough. We've kept you long enough with us, Erin, or Robyn, and thank you again for your time and for speaking to us about all manner of things, and best of luck with the next book in the series, and best of luck with the TV series.
Yes, hope we'll see it on Netflix sometime soon.
That would be amazing. Yes,
yeah.
All of my fingers and toes are crossed for that. But
and once you're a huge star, we'll get you back on.
Definitely.
Absolutely. What do you mean? She already is a huge star, but
even bigger star.
When you're even bigger, we'll get you on with Henry Cavill as a double act.
Oh yeah.
I do still have his mobile number in my phone.
Okay.
I imagine he's probably changed it by now.
He's changed it since you were texting him every day.
Yeah, I know. I couldn't help myself.
Well, thanks, Erin.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
A good fun evening. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
That's it for today's episode. We hope you've enjoyed it. Please let us know if you have any questions or things you'd like us to cover in future episodes. You can contact us on the Facebook page, which is facebook.com/rockpaperswordspodcast, or on Twitter, where we are at rock_swords. You can find out more about our books on matthewharvey.com and stephenamackay.com. And we're both also on Twitter and Facebook, and we'd love to hear from you. So pop in and drop by and say hello. The theme music is written and performed and copyrighted by us. So until next time, a rock, paper, swords, it's goodbye from me, Matthew Harvey.
And it's goodbye from me, Stephen A. Mackay.
And remember, whatever action and adventure you have going on in your life, be kind, stay safe, and happy reading.